Thank you, Madam Chair. And this probably goes a little further than Senator Clemens asked his question regarding the testing. One of the I can only describe it as uprisings to occur. Revolt has been the opt-out movement, and clearly from the messaging I see on Facebook and other places, it's a big deal. How does the one person thinks it's a good deal? So we agree. Maybe more. In terms of the school board, and I'd ask the superintendent not to chime in here because I'm sure he has a very professional response. But in terms of the school board members, what do you feel about the opt-out movement, and does it actually help you defend against some of the standardized testing going on with the state of Florida? The second question would be, and if you want to answer all this at the same time, it's fine, do you feel the state needs to move to an elected education commissioner as opposed to an appointed commissioner? Just, we'll put it out there. This is, by the way, the best meeting I think I've had in 7 years, so.
We'll give everybody options on which questions you want to address. So anybody want to weigh in first on the testing? Mr. Murgio?
Well, being a former school principal for 20 years, I think the reason why people are wanting to opt out is because they think it's an unfair situation. Professionally, I think testing is a good thing, so I'm not necessarily in favor of opting out. However, the situation that parents and students and educators find themselves in now, how do you partake in something that's really not beneficial at this point to students and to children?
Any others? Mrs. Brill?
Thank you, and I have to say that the state really needs to get it right, and I think that as long as that FSA is in place and it's not been validated, I think we need to have an alternative assessment. It's something I've always spoken about for our ESC students, but I'm at the point where if the state is not going to do something to alleviate this, then, and now I'll get in trouble probably with everybody, but I would support opt-out.
So, and Mr. Barbieri?
I just want to ask the state legislature, the delegation members, if a teacher's giving a test to see how the children are doing, and the results of the test are released 7 months after the children have left the grade, or in October, and then, even then the teacher doesn't get the results to show which questions the children missed so that she knows or he knows what the children need to key in on, how can that possibly be a fair test? I mean, the teachers can't get any better because they don't know where the children are missing this. So you tell me the logic in having a computer-based test, which we all thought was going to give them instant answers as to how the children are doing, waiting 6 months after the school year's ended to find out how the children did without any opportunity for the teacher to remediate. I mean, does that make any sense to you? I can tell you my grandchild's in I've wanted them in third grade. And if we were going to use this test to hold my grandchild back, I would raise holy hell. I'd rather ask the teacher, is my grandchild ready to go on to fourth grade, than base it on a test that has not been proven, that it was field tested in Utah, where the demographics are totally different than Palm Beach County, and that there's flaws, as the superintendent said, in the study that shows that there's flaws in what my grandchild was taught and what my grandchild was tested on. So I have very grave reservations about using that test to penalize children whose whole lives are at stake here if we hold them back or we penalize them, or more importantly, we just get them to the point where they just are so overwhelmed or so disappointed or disenchanted with school that they don't even want to go anymore. And we've heard those stories from parents about children that don't want to go to school because they're so frightened with what's happening to them. So, just weigh that in your mind and tell me how that's logical to test these children and not give them the results of their test till 5 months after they're gone. What are we going to do with the third graders? Tell them, by the way, you're in fourth grade now, but you failed the test, so you need to go back to third grade. Somebody give me the logic on that.
Can I make one quick comment? In all of the years that I've heard the debate about testing, I have never heard anybody from the school district say that we're opposed to testing any place in the state. The Florida School Boards Association has been consistent, and I've never heard anybody from the legislature, when these bills have been passed over the years, say anything but this is helping us improve education by setting standards. The biggest concern I have right now is exactly what Dr. Avosa said, that when we took away grading schools to include student gains, we have now set a mark on the heads of every one of those children who worked hard during the last year to make progress and say, we're not counting the progress that you've made. We're only going to count whatever it is. So we're now adding, not trying to improve what happens to our students, but we're punishing students. And that's been the message related to testing that we have. Mrs. Andrews, and then Mrs. Whitfield, and Mrs. Brill.
And thank you. And the Florida School Boards Association, starting right here with Palm Beach, we've been on record that we're not ready to move. The Florida School Boards Association made the plea last year, Palm Beach County School District over the last few years. We've said it, we're not ready to implement because of the flawed system. Our children suffered this past year with the FSA, the computer debacle that we had, with all of the nerve-wracking process of the test. I just sat on the educators, reactor panel, reacting to the educators' panel assessment of this test. Everything's so rushed because there's a timeline. You have 90 days, legislature, to actually say what you want to do. But we haven't heard from the public. The public needs to weigh in. The school boards have weighed in. The superintendents have weighed in that we're not ready. The public is screaming and saying, don't damage my child. Don't penalize my child. We know the test is not valid. Norm reference in Utah. As I sat on the reactor panel, they said they did their best to move the questions that didn't work. How do I know that's truly the real deal? Our children were being tested, and many of them didn't make it. When you look at the subgroups, your free and reduced lunch, your African Americans, your ELL, special education students, and when you look at the commissioner's rating based on what we have to go with, that 50% that you're looking there is way, way larger than that when you dig down into subgroups. As you talk about how many F schools all across the state in Palm Beach County, it's because we're not ready. So we know we're not ready. The governor can stop it right now, but we know you will have 90 days to listen to all of us. Please stop this disaster. A disaster for our children, a disaster for our teachers. And we can't allow our students to go down like this.
Dr. Robinson and then Mrs. Whitfield.
No, go to somebody else.
Mrs. Whitfield, Mrs. Brill.
Thank you. I'm really excited to talk a little bit about this. I think it's a really important issue for us on the school board. I have a couple of just quick things to say about it. The first thing is a lot of things we talk about with you are going to be about money. We have a lot of money problems. That's something that kind of happens a lot at the schools when we're talking about that. This is an issue that you can really help us to save money, and let me talk about why that's important. First of all, to answer Representative Pafford's question, I don't believe in opting out. I think that doesn't make any sense. I want us as a school district to work within the system we're given. However, if the system is flawed, which right now I do believe the system is flawed, as the representatives of this county, we have to come together and go back and fix the system. I don't really want children individually to opt out or us as a county to opt out, because I think that doesn't send the right message. The message should be that we are working within the system we're given, and hopefully the system will in turn work for us. I do believe in standards. I think most people that work here at the school district believe in standards. It's how we decide how we're going to educate our students, where we're not doing a great job and where we are doing a great job, where we need to put our resources. One of the issues that if we have 35 schools that come back with an F grade next year, we as a school district provide an extra hour to each of those schools because we would drop into the low 300 or the low 100 or whatever it is. So that extra funding that we are mandated to come up with, or the funding for all of these programs that we are mandated to come up with, adversely affects the education that we can give to our students. So when you are looking at the budget, which I know no one ever says there's ever any more money for, and you see the unfunded mandates that continually come from Tallahassee down to Palm Beach County and to all the counties and say, you know, we have to provide these additional services, but with these additional services, we're not getting any more money. There's a couple of things that are in our legislative priorities that I would love to quickly point out as, unfunded. We feel VPK is not funded fully, so that's an issue that we have, and we really need VPK, and we want to continue to do it, but we're having to pull funding from other locations in order to keep our kids in full day. Another big issue that we've had for our additional funding has been well, obviously our capital needs, that's been huge. I'm missing the other one that I wanted to talk about. Oh, the ESE guarantee, that's been another huge problem. We have to come up with that additional funding when we don't have that funding coming to us from the state. So I'm cautioning you to not let all of our schools fail or become places where we are having so many kids that are underperforming, because it's going to in turn force this system to no longer be able to put in innovative programs. We're going to have to pull back from all of these things that we're doing that are really good for our students. So just give us this year. And that's the plea that I'm going to make to all of your colleagues when I go to Tallahassee next week. I'm going to say, give us this year, because we need it. We need the extra time, and we need to be able to make up this ground and make sure that our test really does test what the kids learned. Thank you.
Mrs. Brill.
Thank you. Three quick comments. If we allow the schools for the entire state in Palm Beach County to have so many F-rated schools this coming year based on a flawed system, how are businesses ever going to want to move to Palm Beach County or to Florida? Isn't that part of the development that the governor wants in the state? Second piece is, in terms of opt-out, if there were an opt-out, I strongly believe we need an alternative measure. We still want accountability, and there has to be a way to measure students. And I think that answer appears on page 3 of the consortium's platform. Dr. Avosa had mentioned how important third grade is, and the consortium and the school board has asked that we make permanent the 2014-15 procedure for determining third grade retention and promotion. Those procedures allowed for portfolio, for remediation, to look at other factors. And I think it's critical at that young age that we not hold children back based upon a flawed test. Thank you.
Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. I was trying to actually organize my angry thoughts.
Can we, I don't think your microphone's working.
Okay.
And I want to hear what you have to say, Doctor.
So maybe you shouldn't have heard me. No, what I was saying was I was trying to organize my angry thoughts, because I get very angry and frustrated whenever we start talking about this high stakes testing. And some of my comments will be, statements that I've made year after year after year. But I just want to be clear that we've always had some degree of accountability, right? I mean, we all took quizzes and tests, right? What they're trying to do, what's being done now is to try to have that higher level data so that somebody in Tallahassee can look and make judgments, or somebody in Washington. And my problem with all of this, though, is the high stakes nature of it. It's not the test. I'm all for standards. I'm actually all for the test if the test measures what the child's supposed to know and be able to do as outlined in the standards, which is in question at this point. But my major issue is how we punish children, teachers, and schools as a whole with these test results. If in fact these test results were used and given to, they could publish it far and wide and give it to us to measure how we're doing as a board and as a leadership team, that's good. Punish us, not the children. It's painful. And I'm going to ask you again, I say this every time, please Google and read Test, Punish, and Push Out. It's a very good document that outlines what happens to a child's spirit when we're not able to bring them to the level that they're supposed to be, which takes me to the learning gains issue, because I've been around long enough that I remember that the class of 2001 was the first graduating class that was supposed to pass the 10th grade FCAT in order to graduate. Well, as I recall, 80% or more of the students across the state would not have graduated. So what did they do? They changed the rules. And that is what has happened throughout this account. And I promise you, I believe that I think they just scrub the data every year to get the look that they want. Which is disgusting. Which now takes me to the fact that I want to be crystal clear that we have trained as a system throughout the state to essentially, to Representative Powell, to jump a 3-foot hurdle, if you will, okay? And now all of a sudden it's a 5-foot hurdle. And as Mrs. Andrews has said, we're not ready. We haven't trained for the 5-foot hurdle. Do we want to jump it? Yep. But you got to give us time. But I would beg you to use every bit of influence that you have to remove the high stakes punishment portion of this accountability system. Now, in terms of the question about opting out, I wish we could just opt out as a district. I really do. Because I think that it is wrong to punish people instead of using that information to guide what we do better, right? So, you know, if a parent came to me, I would give them one answer as a school board member and another answer as a parent, okay? Just to be clear. Now, but what would happen to the system with opting out is the students that have parents that have time, energy, and the wherewithal to understand the game would opt out. That would leave the students who don't have these idealized parents taking the test, right? And statistically speaking, it's the kids who don't have these idealized parents that are ones who are not doing so well on the test. So then how would we look, right? You know, so the whole thing frustrates me. And then lastly, let me just say, I watched the webinar on the cut scores. That was the most ridiculous thing I have seen in a very long time. And I do not understand how, okay, maybe I've been asleep at the wheel if they've been doing this all the time, because this is horrible. So here we have standards which say this is what you're supposed to know and be able to do. Then we have a test, flawed as described, but we have a test that's supposed to measure this. And then we have a quasi-political process where we determine what pass is going to be. So are we going to now start having SAC meetings where we're going to say, well, at Forest Hill High, A will be 90%, but at another school, A will be 70%? That was and somebody tell me I'm wrong. Now, because maybe I misunderstood, I can misunderstand. They've actually sat there and negotiated what level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 would be, and then the reactor panel, I think it was called, came in and looked at the data and said, well, if this is what level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 will be, then here's the percentage of students who won't be proficient in each subgroup. This is insane, and this is completely contrary to the standards-based movement. It's like we have insanity on multiple levels here. Thank you.
So thank you. Representative Mager, I think you saw there was no passion on Representative Pafford's question on that one. So.
Madam Chairman.
Thank you for those heartfelt comments.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, I know that Representative Powell had a question next.